Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video we'll be taking a look at Druids in the Shadowlands Alpha. I posted a straw poll for you guys to choose from, and I'll let all of you guys decide which characters you wanted to see for Shadowlands in the next video. I allowed all of you in straw poll to select as many classes as you wanted, and I asked you to pick classes that you are interested in for Shadowlands. And a massive amount of you guys wanted to see Druid, so by your guys' request, we're gonna do a video on Druids. Druids have 4 specs, so this might be the longest video of the list. I'll try to keep it as brief and as short as I can. But anyway, let's take a look at where Druids are at in Shadowlands. I should let everybody know, and I'll do this with every class, this is Alpha, this is all new, and there's a good chance a lot of this stuff changes. Some of the stuff we're seeing here might not even make it into the end game, but we do get to see where the process is and progress with some of these classes and specs from Blizzard, where Shadowlands is at right now. We're not playing on max level characters, just level 50, where max level is 60. The damage numbers is pretty squished on the alpha as of right now, but we'll still take a look at where the specs are currently. Druids in general are going through quite a bit of changes, but Balanced Druid got also a little bit extra. They're redesigning their mastery a little, so that'll be quite a bit to get into. Take a look where Druids are at right now. The focus for Druids and Blizzard in this expansion seems to be to make Druids as much of an option to be hybrid, or at least give more value when diving into other forms that are not the one you spec into. So we'll talk about that in the future. We could begin with Barkskin, still in the game, with Bear form, same as it was, Cat form, and Cycle makes a return. For Feral Druids, you will not be able to use this as an insta-cast, but still very exciting that it's a base ability. Dash is still in the game with Entangled Roots, versus Bite is there for the Cat form, Growl for Bear. We got Hibernate in order to, well, do the same thing as we did in BFA, to put a creature to sleep. Iron Fur is available for Bear form as a baseline ability. Mangle is also available as a baseline Bear form ability. Moonfire, Prowl, Rebirth, Regrowth, all that is here. Revive, Shred for Cat form, and Soothe are all here. And now every Druid gets Stampeding Roar. This is going to make Druid utility in dungeons and raids, not just Feral Druid, insanely high. And there's also other abilities that Druids can choose from depending which affinities dive into. Again, Blizzard trying to allow you to play outside of your other roles if you want to, with a lot more freedom. You still have Teleport to Moonglade, so if you ever need to go back to Moonglade for any reason, you can. They really could do something with the class vendors there, or class trainers. Still have Travel form with Aquatic form and Flight form. For Balanced Druids in particular, what is new? Now, some of these abilities are going to be based on which affinity I have selected, so we will skip over those and we'll cover them again in this video. Let's start with Celestial Alignment. 3-minute cooldown. It has been changed. It no longer has an extra damaging buff, rather it just provides a crit buff and activates Eclipses. I guess let's talk about Eclipses first, one of the main forms of damage for Boomkin. So now, instead of the original empowerments where Solar Wrath or Lunar Strike was empowered, first of all, we have Wrath back in again, as it was, with a different icon though, as well as Starfire. They still do the same thing as a Solar Wrath and a Lunar Strike, but it's Starfire and Wrath. So the names have been changed to the originals, but the effects still stay from Battle for Azeroth. And now you dive into Eclipses instead of using Star Surge to empower your Nature and Arcane abilities. Starfire has a 25% chance to empower Wrath for 10 seconds. Wrath has a 25% chance to empower your Starfire for 10 seconds. Each eclipse may occur once every 30 seconds, so they have an internal. The idea is you're supposed to start with like Starfire to dive into Eclipse, Solar, and then spam Wrath. When Solar Eclipse ends, you still continue to spam Wrath until you reach Lunar Eclipse. Once you're in Lunar Eclipse, you'll continue just to spam Starfire over and over and over until you go back to the Solar. So you go back and forth and back and forth. So, with your mastery, now the damage of your nature-based abilities and arcane-based abilities, depending if you are in Solar Eclipse or Lunar Eclipse, is increased. That means certain abilities that do arcane damage should be used during Lunar Eclipse. Certain abilities that do extra nature damage should probably be used during Solar Eclipse. And any ability that does astral damage increases in damage anytime an eclipse is up. So this is going to be the base playstyle for Balanced Druids, and certain abilities are going to work around these Eclipses. Celestial Alignment activates both of those Eclipses at once, allowing you to play whichever playstyle you want to. Generates 30 Astral Power, has a 10-second duration, because the Eclipses are only 10-second duration during this ability, and 15% extra crit. You still have Innervate to provide a heal for your healers, so utility for Druids is still there. Moon Confirm is still very strong, and still has the effect of if you get hit by a single target ability, you have a chance to Starfire and it's instant. Starfall got buffed heavily in terms of, the numbers are a lot different, but Star Surge now has, I can show here, Star Surge has 1,000 astral damage for 30 astral power. Starfall has about 1,000 extra damage for 50 astral power. So in a cleave, like a 2-target or 3-target, Starfall will probably be a lot stronger now compared to BFA. Starfire is in the game, 8 astral power. Star Surge, we just talked about it. Sunfire is still in the game. And we got Typhoon, baseline, just for playing a Boomkin. Then we have Wrath, Astral Influence for extra reach, and eventually Starfall at rank 2, which will make Starfall extend your dots of Moonfire and Sunfire by 4 seconds. So in a heavy AoE situation, you might just start spamming Starfall just because it does a lot of damage, but also extends the dots so you don't have to worry about that playstyle. Now let's talk about talents, because talents will have other abilities that we just skipped over. In the first level 15 row, you have Nature's Balance, Warrior of Elune, and Force of Nature all do the same amount of damage in terms of BFA, except for trees. They really do slap a little bit harder in Shadowlands. Level 25, you got Tiger Dash, Stale Renewal, and Wild Charge, so nothing new here. Level 30, Affinities are going to be a little bit stronger for you, especially if you're running Heart of the Wild, which is also back. Feral Affinity is going to give you extra Moon Speed, Cat abilities, and Maim. That's like the big abilities, Maim. Then you have Guardian Affinity, which will give you Guardian abilities like Frenzied Regen and Incapacitate and Roar. So imagine a Boomkin in a dungeon with Incap Roar to interrupt an enemy ability. Not only having Solar Beam to interrupt, but also Guardian Affinity with Incap Roar is going to be quite good. Resto Affinity, where you gain Ursol's Vortex as a Boomkin that gives you, with a baseline Typhoon and Ursol's, lots of control. Level 35, you have Mighty Bash, so you can have Ursol's, Typhoon, and Mighty Bash. Or replace Mighty Bash for Mass Entanglement. As a Balance Druid, you're going to have a lot of control over a variety of enemies in PvP and PvE. Or you can go for Heart of the Wild. What Heart of the Wild will do is, whatever affinity you chose, once you press Heart of the Wild, you'll actually be able to be viable within that affinity. So if I have Resto Affinity for the duration of Heart of the Wild, which is 45 seconds, healing of restoration-based abilities increased by 30%, and mana cost reduced by 50%. If you're Guardian Affinity, you gain Bear Form, 20% stamina, multiple uses of Iron Fur that may overlap, just like a Guardian, and Frenzied Regen has 2 charges, just like a Guardian Druid. And then Feral Affinity makes all your Feral abilities do 30% more damage. Essentially, Blizzard will give you, with Heart of the Wild, ability to play a specific role that is not the role that you normally are, a little bit stronger. How strong is this going to be? Like, could you off-tank a boss when, let's say, your second tank inside of a raid died and you go, alright boys, time for me to press Heart of the Wild and tank this guy for 45 seconds while the other tank rests up and recharges cooldowns? Maybe. We'll just have to wait and see, but Blizzard does want to give players the ability. This would be really strong in PvP for Balanced Druids with Resto Affinity. This would be like your big one button, unless they disable this for PvP, which I hope they don't, even though it's a 5-minute cooldown. I really hope they don't. Level 40, you have Incarnation, which gives you haste and crit, no more damage increases, but for 30 seconds instead of the 10 seconds that your normal Celestial Alignment grants you. Then you have Star-Lord, which functions exactly the same as BFA, and then Soul of the Forest, which is a little different. It now increases the duration of Eclipses, and the custom of Eclipse-based abilities, so Wrath and Starfire? Wrath and Starfire, I have to relearn these abilities all over again, are going to be a slightly faster cast. Level 45, Stellar Flare is going to do astral damage. Should probably be applying this dot every time you have an eclipse. Twin Moons will do extra Moonfire damage and will jump to a secondary target. Stellar Drift increases Starfall duration by 2 seconds, damage by 25%, and allows you to cast while moving. And Starfall also has an AoE around you, but we'll show you in gameplay in just a bit. But this could essentially make Starfall, with the buffs that it got, or at least the rebalancing of damage that it has in this expansion, a lot stronger as a cleave ability. But also I like the movement while casting. That could essentially maybe be good in some key situations. In level 50 you have Shooting Stars, which will do astral damage. Fury of Elune, which will also do astral damage and generate astral power. This one does have a fall off the more targeted hits. And then New Moon, which does arcane damage, and it's exactly just like the one in Legion. Okay, that was a lot. I really needed a breather because Druids just have a lot of things change. But now that we got through it, let's show you what the playstyle of Druid is going to be like. Moonfire and Sunfire are still going to be the dots you'll maintain. And essentially, I think you'll start with Starfire in your rotation just to see if you can dive into a lunar or into a solar eclipse. So you'll use Starfire until you get into solar eclipses, say for single target fights. And once you have this eclipse, you'll start spamming Wrath. And while you have Wrath, you also have still the Astral Power bar, and you will be using your Star Surges during an eclipse, which do more damage while in the eclipse, in order to extend your eclipse a little bit longer. Then after solar eclipse falls off, you'll try to dive into lunar eclipse and do the same thing again. And you'll be using Star Surges, or let's say you'll be using Starfalls instead, in order to get yourself a little bit extra damage while you are in eclipse. Another thing I guess I could show you right here while I'm at it, Starfall does have an AoE area around you. You can actually see a circle around you, and it shifts as you move. So it's like the old school Starfall from back in the day. It's around your area instead of around an area that you get to pick. Then there's also a couple interesting things you can do with Balance Druid. In particular, let's say you're trying to cheese certain damage like New Moon. It does arcane damage. And you have an Arcane Eclipse. Mastery increases damage of those arcane based abilities in Arcane Eclipse. So if I'm just mouse over New Moon and we start using Wrath, see if we can dive into a Lunar Eclipse. New Moon goes from 300 damage to 400, which will increase to 1000, which can increase to 1800 for full moon. So certain abilities that are arcane based will do more damage in arcane eclipses. And then there's small things like your trees, they'll still do the taunt for you, but relative to the damage you already do, they'll actually do quite a bit. I mean, the damage they're doing right now is actually good damage. They could take a normal mob outside of this area and actually punch it half to death. So certain abilities are just going to do more damage. And it seems that Blizzard maybe is moving away from boomkins from the way they are right now, where they're all about the biggest burst during a small opportunity window, rather away towards, hey, you do good damage all the time as long as you're getting into eclipses. So boomkins might be more consistent and might be a lot better for AoE with these changes, but I guess time will tell, although it has very interesting synergies and a lot of changes. Okay, the boomkin one was probably the one with the biggest amount of changes, and we can get into cat form, which is going to be much easier to get through with Feral and Guardian and Resto. Because, well, when you look at the class abilities, they're all the same. All of it stays the same as Blizzard trying to give you hybridness, a possibility. I do get Wrath as a baseline as a Feral, but everything else stays. When it comes to Feral abilities, we still have Berserk into Maim as a stun that does a little bit of damage. Then we have Rake, Moonkin form because of a affinity that it shows. Rip, which does quite a bit of damage right now, at least compared to all the other abilities on the list. Skull Bash, Thrash. We also have Tiger's Fury, and Feline Adept, Feline Swiftness, Feral Instincts, Infected Wounds. Mastery is the same. It increases your bleed damage and finishing moves, so Bite is part of this, as well as, I believe, Primal Wrath is also part of this as well, since it is a finisher. Omen of Clarity, Predator Swiftness, which does not work with Cyclone. It only works with Entangling Roots and Regrowth, otherwise that'd be really strong for PvP. And Primal Fury. For Feral Druid talents, we have Predator, Sabertooth, and Lunar Inspiration as normal, with level 25 not changed with Tiger Dash Renewal and Wild Charge. Affinities, we'll talk about them earlier, but with Balance Affinity, you gain Typhoon, Guardian again Incapacitating, and Ursul's for a Feral with Resto Affinity, which could be quite good. Same thing as level 35 with Hearted with Wild. Then Soul of the Forest still is the same with Savage Roar and Incarnation, King of the Jungle. Level 45 we have Son of Blood, Brutal Slash, and Primal Wrath as they were. And then we have Moment of Clarity, Blood Talents are slightly different, and Feral Frenzy as it was. Now cat form and Feral Druid is a much easier spec to explain because it's essentially the same cat as from BFA, just in a much easier fashion. Now for Feral Druids, there weren't really all that great of a spec for majority of Battle for Azeroth. They've had pockets where they were incredibly good. Within PvE, I feel like what really held them back is needing certain traits and certain essences in order to be viable. So with a couple changes that happened here in the Shadowlands, Blizzard simply made Feral a little bit easier. Your ease of playstyle is going to be still maintaining your Rake, your Rip, spamming shreds and big bites. And that's essentially it. And you even have less abilities to press because of the changes like with Blood Talent. So if you were to play probably the current build of what Feral is like right now, your opener would be slightly different because of Blood Talents. Because Blood Talents, it'll give you extra damage on Rip, but only when you Shred, Rake, and Bite within a quick succession of one another. I mean, in the opener, you can just walk up, Shred, Rip, and then Bite, and then build up common points for the next Rip, but I think you would want to be a little bit more creative with your opener if you're trying to do the most amount of damage. So your opener is going to want to look something like, go into Stealth, we'll go into Berserk, into a Target Sphere with a Rake, get some Brutal Slashes in there just to build up the common points, Shred, Bite, Rake, and now we'll put up a Blood Talents. From here, we just want to build up 5 common points, and because we are Sabretooth, we'll just extend that Rip. We don't need to put too many common points into it. And then from there, we just spam our abilities with Thrash, or Swipe, or Shred. As many Shreds as possible, because we have Berserk up, which gives us a lot more energy to work with. Refresh our Rake, and as we get close to 50 energy, Bite, which will refresh our Rip. And that's it. And every time we have our Target Sphere, you'll want to do as much damage as humanly possible, and you'll want to try to refresh your bleeds, like your Rake, for example. And if you have, I guess, we could also put Thrash as well. But that's it. Besides this, the only thing that BFA really did is with certain traits, it gave you more damage for a more complicated rotation. But when you take out all that complexity of what Battle for Azeroth offered, now you don't have a Rake that you need to maintain with a regrowth that's going to proc Blood Talents, because Blood Talents works completely differently. So certain changes to the Feral just made the spec a lot easier to play. And I guess the potential could be that it changes completely. Maybe Blizzard has a lot more plans to make the spec a little bit more complicated than it currently is right now, but it seems as it is, it's a fairly simple spec without too much crazy complexity behind it. The complexity might come from your variety of different talents, because now, since you're not limited to the essences and the traits that you run, Lunar Inspiration could potentially be good, maybe Predator could have a playstyle for it, Savage Roar could come back for the consistency, or maybe we just put all our chips in one basket for King of the Jungle and just try to do the most amount of damage in the opener. Maybe Moment of Clarity might be a solid choice, but Feral Frenzy for the double bite combo and the extra bleed that it offers could also be insanely strong. We just don't know. Feral is kind of just in a open water, and it could really go anywhere. But it is a much simpler spec for a lot of people to get into. A lot of its juggling or spinning plates playstyle is missing now. There's a lot of room to fill it, but it seems like a very solid spec, very easy to get into, not too much complexity. But maybe it has, you know, a potentially strong build with a very kind of intricate rotation hidden somewhere in it that we just don't see. But overall, the spec seems pretty simple. Moving on to Guardian Druid, we're gonna go through the whole spiel of class stuff again, but for the most part, it all stays as is. You don't really get anything new as a Guardian Druid. Simple. For Guardian-based abilities, you get Berserk back, which is quite cool. It basically acts like a soft incarnation, is how I guess one of my guildies would describe it. You go Berserk for 15 seconds, reducing the cooldowns of Mangle, Thrash, Growl, and Frenzy Regen by 75% and Cost of Iron 4 by 50. It lets you get a good opener on a boss or a bunch of enemies on a 3-minute cooldown and get all your defensive buffs and all your utilities and bleeds rolling early. And can probably apply for good damage because of all the cooldown reduction that comes with it. But essentially they gave him a softer version of the Incarnation, where Incarn would let you charge the enemy, do a lot of damage, and get all your defenses set up early. This essentially lets you do that in an easier way as a baseline. Frenzy Regen has 2 charges, 31-second recharge, 24% of your health as a heal over 3 seconds on GCD. In Cap Roar, we got Maul, we got Remove Corruption, Skull Bash, Survival Instincts with 2 charges for 2.7, not really that high. It's normally on a 4-minute recharge. We got Swipe, we got good old reliable Thrash, we have Gore as a passive, Lightning Reflexes, Mastery Unchanged, Thick Hide, Ursine's Adept, as well as Frenzied Regeneration at a higher rank when we reach level 52. Frenzied Regen also increases all healing received for 20 seconds. So this is like, what, a 3-second duration? It is a 3-second duration. This is going to be kind of a short window, but if you are really jonesing for a big heal, your healer inside of raid or dungeon is going to love you for activating this ability during crucial times where healing is going to be very much needed. When it comes to talents, this is where we can really start taking a look at Bear Druid. Brambles, Blood Frenzy, Bristling for are all still in the game. Level 25 you have Tiger Dash, Wild Charge, and Renewal. And the best part about Renewal, it's off the GCD, so if you're ever in an emergency, 30% of yourself as a heal, and it's going to feel quite good on a fairly short cooldown. Level 30 we have Bounce Affinity, Barrel Affinity, and Resto Affinity with all the buffs that it comes with. Level 45 Mighty Bash, Mass Entangle, Heart of the Wild. Level 40 Soul of the Forest, Galactic Guardian, and Incarnation, which if you look at it, it's same as your Frenzy, the same as Berserk, but has also 30% extra increased health, and your Mangle Cleaves too. Level 45 you still have Earth Warden, Survival of the Fittest, which will probably be still really good on raid as it reduces your cooldown to Barkskin Survival Instincts, and Guardian of Loon. Level 50 you have Rend and Tear, Lunar Beam, and Pulverize, which is slightly different. On live, it's just a buff you can maintain at all times, but it doesn't really give you a damage debuff. This is 30-second cooldown, gives you 20% damage reduction for 10 seconds. So it's more of a competitive choice together with the Rend and Tear, otherwise just being all passives. And then Lunar Beam has a healing component with it. For Bear Druid, I have, at least in the current level, 15,000, almost 16,000 health. This heals me for 3,800. I wonder if this will be a good heal, but from what my tank guildie said, this will probably won't be all that good. When it comes to Bear Druid, the playstyle is the same as it was. You run up to the enemy, you'll use your Mangling cooldown, Thrashing cooldown. When you have nothing else to do, you'll swipe. And in the opener, you can now pop Berserk and really get your cooldowns rolling. If you get procs of Galactic Guardian with your Moonfire, you will Moonfire. And you'll start stacking Iron Fur and seeing if you can get a couple of them overlapped. The more of them you overlap, the more armor you can gain essentially. And especially with this Berserk, you can get 4 stacks pretty quickly. And I think, do they actually fall off? Yeah, they do have a fall off. So it's separate buffs that are overlapping each other all at the same time. And with the changes, you also will be able to get Frenzy Regen to also give you a self heal from allies, so it'll be increased. It'll be a self heal. It is smaller than live, but you will be able to use it in order to coordinate with your healers. Hey, I'm about to give you a big heal. Okay, I'm gonna pop Frenzy Regen. During those 3 seconds, all healing on you will be increased, which might take bears out of really emergency situations. Outside of that, bears didn't really change all too much. I feel like what utility you're going to be able to get as a bear with Typhoon, Ursul's Vortex, and Roots with the Mass Entanglement is going to make it a little bit easier in dungeon groups. Then having the ability to renewal yourself as an emergency button is going to be nice as well for extra self-healing. And then you have the ability with Berserk to get yourself a big opener to get all your cooldowns, all your rage built up, all those bleeds on every enemy in order to get certain baseline mechanics, passives rolling. It's going to be nice, but for the most part, bear is bear. Nothing really changed too much, and we don't really know if it's going to be good or not. It's too early to tell. I think as long as Blizzard tries to make tanks really strong this expansion, I think it'll probably be the best way to go about it. But when it comes to tanks, it's way too early to tell whether they'll be good or not. They've been kind of up and down in BFA, but hopefully they'll be better in Shadowlands. Resto Druid. When it comes to the Druid abilities, everything is the same as every other spec. Nothing new. When it comes to restoration-based abilities, we have changes to Efflorescence. It now, actually let me replace some of my trinkets just to make sure the numbers are shown up properly here. It'll spawn a wait. Huh. Okay, there was a little bit of a bug with this ability before, and it would only spawn on top of you, but now it is back to the original playstyle that it was. So Efflorescence for a little bit here, maybe it was a bug in the game. But what this ability would do is it would spawn where the druid was. Just now before doing this video, but now you can go back to placing it where you want to. I guess it was either a bug or maybe Blizzard recently changed this ability back up due to the feedback. Either way, Efflorescence is back to normal, so I guess I shouldn't even mention that in the first place now that we know it's good to go. You'll still have Innervate, and Innervate will have an extra bonus in the future. We still have Ironbark, Life Bloom, Nature's Cure. We have Rake from the cat-based abilities, Revitalize, Rejuvenation, Sunfire, Swiftman, Swipe, Tranquility. Ursul's Vortex is a baseline because you're Resto. Mastery is the same with all your HOTS. Increasing your healing increase for each additional restoration heal on the time, so Mastery is as it is. Moment of Clarity, Ysera's Gift is baseline, and Innervate at level 52 will get rank 2. If you cast Innervate on somebody else that's another healer, you'll gain its effect at 50% full effectiveness. So right now, Innervate makes it so during this duration, none of the abilities while Innervate is up cost mana. So essentially for you, they'll refund or cost 50% less mana, which will mean the Resto Druids will be able to be useful for allies, and they'll also be able to benefit from the mana reduction to create extra value and the mana regeneration in some sense. You also have Regrowth Rank 2. Regrowth Initial Heal has a 40% increased critical chance for a critical if the target is already affected by Regrowth. Iron Bark will also increase all heals over time by 20%. And Nature Swiftness makes it come back at level 58. Your next Regrowth, Rebirth, or Entangling Root is instant, free, castable in all forms, and heals for an additional 100%. Except for Rebirth. I guess it technically heals you for full. Unless you come back with Rebirth at full health instead of like 20% or something. That would be interesting. But it's a 1 minute cooldown, and I think Resto Druids are going to love this ability. It's interesting how it says your next Regrowth, Rebirth, or Entangling Roots, but it doesn't have anything for Cyclone. So I guess they thought about it ahead for PvP. In the talents for Druids, we have Abundance, Cenarian Ward as normal, and Nourish comes back in the game. Heals the target for 672, receives triple bonus from Mastery Harmony. So if you have a bunch of HOTS on yourself, for example, say I'll put a Rejuve, Life Bloom, and Wild Growth, and when I spam Nourish, it should do extra healing because of all those HOTS on me. Gains triple the bonus, so this might be a really good heal that's decent for the mana, or might be another version of emergency heal instead of just always having Regrowth. That actually costs slightly more mana, so maybe this is actually very, very close in the mana cost, but it's a longer cast. So I guess instead of adding Healing Touch, they give you Nourish as an option if you want a sort of Healing Touch based ability. Level 25, you have Tiger Dash, still with Renewal, Wild Charge. Level 30 are your affinities, as per usual. Level 35 is your Crowd Control and Heart of the Wild, which I think Restos are going to love, since Heart of the Wild can increase your Feral affinity in dungeons. I think that's going to be a very much taken talent. Level 40, we have still Soul of the Forest. Cultivation, when Rejuvenation heals the target below 6% health, applies Cultivation to the target, healing them for extra. An Incarnation Tree of Life, which will empower certain casts like Wild Growth, Regrowth, Rejuve, functionality, as well as Entangling Roots. Level 75, we have Inner Peace. Spring Blossoms to empower Efflorescence, and Overgrowth, which is an honor talent that was added to Resto Druids for 600 mana, which is quite a bit with the current pulls. Apply Rejuvenation, Life Bloom, Wild Growth, and Regrowth heal over time for an ally. So it's kind of like an emergency heal, put everything on him. And I guess from there you can spam Nourish or get a Soul of the Forest with a big Regrowth to follow. Level 50 you have Photosynthesis, Germination, as well as Flourish. So nothing here really changed too much. The gameplay for Restoration Druids generally change a lot. You'll still be able to put down your Mushroom, put a bunch of HOTS on an ally, and you'll spam Nourish and try to give them as much healing as possible. Or during emergency, you can also heal them with Regrowth as well. And essentially just maintain your HOTS the whole time. Try to make sure your Life Bloom doesn't fall off, and if any allies are taking a lot of damage, Iron Bark them for extra protection. You need a lot of AoE healing. Tranquility is always there in the game as well. Also, healing increased by 100% when not in a raid. Did that change? That might be new, but maybe not. There's a good chance that they added and changed some things with Druids, and I just haven't taken a close look at it. The one change they did to Swiftbend, actually, 15-second cooldown, a lot less mana than on live. It now consumes a Regrowth, Wild Growth, or Rejuvenation to instantly heal an ally for plenty of healing. I think the best way would be to go for Regrowth to put a very weak healing over time. So if you consume this one with Swiftbend, it's not that big of a worry. But now this makes this ability a little bit stronger, so now you'll need to be aware of Swiftbend, the fact that it will take away a HOT. Yeah, it consumes Wild Growth, Regrowth, Wild Growth, Rejuvenation. So I guess it will try to consume Regrowth. If that's not there, it'll look for Wild Growth. If that's not there, it'll look for Rejuve. Will it consume a Life Bloom? No, it won't. So Life Bloom is just one of those abilities it will not consume. So here it should consume Wild Growth. It does. Okay, so it has a priority list of the abilities that it will consume. This is actually a good thing for, I would say, Restoration Druid. I just didn't know how it was supposed to. Maybe that's how it was supposed to play in the first place. I just wasn't aware until I tested it just now because, well, this place is starting to get populated with players as more people are getting in the alpha. Anyway guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is probably the longest one to record, and I had to re-record multiples of times because Druids have 4 specs. Boomkin's got quite a bit of changes, and just want to make sure I am thorough with this video while also getting through all the basics that you guys, I feel, need to know about the Druid. But now that we got through this one, I think the next class, probably not going to be Demon Hunter, but I would love to just because there's 2 specs, so I can get through it faster. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Hopefully this was a nice glimpse into what Druids are like currently on the alpha. We don't know if they're going to be finalized, and I think Feral still has a growing room from here, but it seems that all other specs are looking good. But you guys let me know in the comments how you feel about Guardians and Resto as healers and tanks. What are your thoughts on changes to Boomkin and Feral? Again, early alpha, lots of things probably going to change. We haven't even seen Covenant abilities or how they function yet. So, too early to call, but thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.